Hey everybody, today we have two Volkswagen GTIs, the original Mark 1 and the brand new 2025 8.5, and in today's video we're going to compare them and find out if Volkswagen has taken the GTI in the right direction. This is truly a bucket list moment for me because I have been obsessed with the Mark 1 GTI since I was a little guy. There's a show called Wheeler Dealers and they restored one. Ed China just made this thing look so good, and ever since then I've always wanted to drive one. I've never had a chance, and then Volkswagen of America said, why don't you come out, drive the new GTI? By the way, we've got an old one as well, and I almost lost it. So let's take a look at this beautiful little GTI. This is technically, because we're here in the US, a 1984 Volkswagen Rabbit GTI, which is pretty cool. 83, 84 model years. These have square headlights, right? The European ones had those little round units, but what an attractive teeny tiny little car. Some crazy specs for you. This car weighs just 2,011 pounds and it costs $7,990. But what we're looking at here was a revolution, an affordable performance car that could carry all your stuff. Now the front end here has got the red, right? We've got the dual red stripes across that outline the face of the car with the big GTI badging. We've got the ridiculous US style bumpers with the little overriders. And then as we make our way around to the side, we've got the iconic 15-inch wheels. 14-inch wheels, alloy wheels with that dual tone look that we see in the new one. We've got the little rub strip that makes its way all the way down the side of the car with the tiny plastic mirrors. And then it's only a two-door car, so it's really a small little unit. Out back here, we've got the Rabbit GTI emblem with the little rabbit figure here, which is just so cool. The grid-style taillights with the amber turn signals and reverse lights, and then once again, the big chunky overrider rear end, and then the blacked out insert here on this tailgate. And speaking of tailgate, check this out. The original hot hatch had a huge lift over height. It was a little tough to get things in and out, but once you lifted your bags over, it was surprisingly roomy considering most things back in the day were sedans and that kind of thing. But what an amazing little car. Let's check what's under the hood. Under the hood is a 1.8 liter, 8-valve inline 4-cylinder with 90 horsepower and 100 pound-feet of torque. This car would do 0 to 60 in about 9.7 seconds. And of course, bam, as the word GTI, or the letters GTI would indicate, it is fuel injected. Now, top speed on this vehicle is just over 100 miles an hour. This is a 10-second car. Just not 10 seconds in the quarter mile that I think the original Don Toretto quote is referencing. Y'all want to hear the sound of the 80s? The sound of my people right there. But check out the interior in this original Mark 1. Everything is red and pretty much everything is velour too. Now these seats are unbelievably comfortable because they're wide with gentle bolstering, so it holds me in place but it doesn't squeeze me, which is awesome. And then the best part of this interior is the golf ball shifter. That is just so cool to see in person. That iconic little golf ball, you push down for reverse. It's just a little 5-speed, but it feels beautiful. We've got the gauges in here, the video quartz clock, volt, and of course temperature. And then we also have the little simple square gauge cluster with the dummy lights, a basic Craig, I believe it's AM FM radio. Check this out, with of course cassette. Just turn it on, tune it. You got your basic vent sliders. This thing is an absolute beauty. All right, let's hop on in and take this little Golf for a ride. All right, we are about to unleash nearly 90 horsepower of excitement. First gear, very kind of loose feeling transmission there, but let's see how it accelerates. Are you ready? In 3, 2, 1, full throttle. Wow, it actually goes pretty good. What a blast. You know what? I'll be darned. That's a lot quicker than I was expecting. Part of it may be It literally feels like I'm driving a gerbil right now. It is that teeny tiny, and that sensation of speed then feels so much greater. But this engine, the sound, it might have a little bit of work on that exhaust, but the noise that exhaust makes, oh my gosh, and it just seems to rev to the absolute moon. That's amazing. On a downshift, oh, incredible. And then we get to the steering. It's a full manual rack, and you feel, I thought the steering feel in the new one is pretty good. We'll talk about that in a second, but the old one, it's like driving a go-kart. It's so nimble and tossable, but the suspension is incredibly soft. So you get a ton of body roll, but it really doesn't matter because you're gonna lose grip before you're gonna roll the car over, but it just is a joy to zoom around this little circuit here. And this is what this car is great at. These little tight turns, little valleys, diving in and out, then you get back on the throttle, maybe even lift up an inside tire, back onto the throttle. Holy cow, I'm in love! This is such a good little car. They were initially intending to sell 5,000 of the original GTIs, and they sold 470,000. And that is not enough. This is an unbelievably good experience. I'm very hot. I don't think we have AC in this car, so I'm gonna roll that window down. Whew. But geez, guys, it does not get better than this from a front-wheel drive driving perspective. This is the best front-wheel drive car I've ever driven, and I'm a Mini enthusiast. I've owned classic Minis and new GPs, and those cars were great. But the lightness of this car, and just the weightiness of the steering and the directness, even 40 years later, is unbelievable. This car is a classic that you could drive every single day and still feel good about it. What an absolute little beast. From a design perspective, there's not a lot to connect this newest generation of GTI to the first. Now, there are some signature GTI elements that are brought into this new Golf, like the red cues and of course the red trim line across the front end. And in this Mark 8.5, you're gonna notice it's actually located above the headlight, starts all the way here at the corner of the car, and then extends all the way through the middle. And then new for 2025, standard across the board, is this illuminated light that exists underneath the red line, which also kind of brings the front end together. So look, I think that this is a pretty attractive car, but it's a little bit more droopy than some of the outgoing, like for example, Mark 7s, and I wish they had made it just a little bit more angular in this headlight design. Now, one element I do think is really cool is down here, the daytime running light. We've got these 5 hexagonal pods, and you're gonna see this throughout the car, and we're gonna see it on the interior. This does look really cool when you're cruising around. Now, as we come along to the side, this is an SE version of the GTI. It's kind of right in between the base Model S and the Autobahn. We've got these 18-inch wheels. It's a dual tone wheel, silver on this gloss black with the red brake calipers to tell folks you're driving something a little bit spicy. And then this is an Eagle Sport tire that's going to be wrapped around these 18-inch alloys. Now, as we make our way down the side here, GTI badging located up here on the door, a matte black finish for the window trim, and then out back, a small spoiler out here on the hatch. We've got dual exhaust indicating that this is a GTI, and then of course to open the trunk, you push in on the emblem, and that's going to pop open. Size of the new GTI is up a huge amount. We're talking over 20 inches longer, but power is up just as much. So this new GTI is running an EA888 engine, similar to last year's vehicle. It makes 241 horsepower, 273 pound-feet of torque. This is the Evo 4 variant of the EA888. And then the big deal is there is no more manual transmission. A Golf GTI staple, being able to shift your own gears, is gone. Instead, the only transmission option is the 7-speed DSG. We'll get into that in a second. Here we go. In the Golf GTI, we got the little pulsing engine start stop there, foot on the brake. Fires into life, a little bit of flare out the exhaust, not a lot of drama though. So let's get this car set up for some fun driving on these wonderful West Virginia roads. So I'm gonna go into the modes here, little shortcut there, and then we've got Eco, Sport, and Custom. In Custom, you can really go crazy with the programming. So check this out, you can change driving dynamics, steering, drivetrain, exterior engine sound, interior engine sound, adaptive cruise control, light assist, and climate control. Holy cow! I'm not going to mess with any of that. I'm just going to go into the sport mode and then leave it in the sport mode because that seems like a great place to start. The drive selector, this little dinky guy, not very satisfying. I want a nice shifter to engage. I think that would be a better overall experience, but then you would lose some, freedom of storage in that center area there. So we're merging onto this back road here. Let me get past this puddle and then let's come to a stop. Let's go full throttle, see how this thing accelerates. So we're in sport mode. You can see S there on the cluster. In 3, 2, 1, I'm just gonna launch it. Okay, a little bit of wheel spins, fighting for grip. That traction control didn't cut all the fun. Wow, look at that. Okay, not bad at all. What I like about this GTI, which I've struggled with in the past on some of the early EA888 engines, is the torque and power delivery. So a lot of the older 2-liter turbos, it felt like they had everything going on at low RPM and then would just kind of fall off a cliff in the upper RPMs. But this engine is willing to work with you and it feels like it's still alive even over 5,000 RPM. Now, if you look at some of this vehicle's competitors, like some of the Mini Cooper S, the JCW, we've owned a bunch of them in the past and I like them a lot, but they're so dominant in the lower RPMs and so dead in the upper RPMs that they're not a lot of fun on a back road because the world just falls off over 4,000. But this engine isn't like that. That DSG, pretty quick to respond. Oh yeah, pretty good. Now let's talk about this transmission. So when you are on a nice road like we are here, the DSG is lovely. It's quick. It always feels like it's right in the right gear when you have it in the sport mode. It's always right around 3,000-4,000 RPM. It's ready to play, and it does what I want it to do in automatic mode. The paddle shifters are incredibly dinky. So the Golf R that we're going to drive a little bit later has these nice elevated paddles. They feel great. This feels like a video game controller. They're just not very nice. And at this price point, if this was a $22,000 car, I would be fine. But at $38,000 where this SE is at, especially in a GTI, I want a nicer paddle shifter. It's a little clickety-clackety. Performance driving, we're gonna find that this DSG is beautifully set up for that. Everyday driving, it's good 90% of the time. But every now and then when you are pulling away from a roundabout, for example, it does some weird stuff where it slips the clutch a little bit too much and it gets a little herky-jerky with the gear engagement. It's just not quite dialed in some of those really specific low-speed maneuvering. It's kind of one of just the inherent downsides of a dual clutch versus a torque converter, but it's something you can live with. I can't help but thinking though, why kill the manual transmission? I think there's only one Volkswagen product at all now that offers a manual transmission, and that's the GLI. Especially at this price point, it's a premium experience. They don't sell a huge amount of GTIs relative to Tiguan's or Taoses, so why not just keep those enthusiasts happy? Inside the new Volkswagen Golf GTI, the biggest difference between this car and the first generation, there are practically no physical buttons whatsoever on the entire center stack. Instead, this new screen is what dominates everything. Now, this is updated for 2025. It's larger and it's got a new interface, which was sorely needed. It is better than the old one. I like how everything is kind of app-based here in the center. I like how we have little toggles here for climate control that are now backlit. That is good, but it is still frustrating to use as a whole, especially the navigation system. On our way up here through the beautiful area here in Virginia, it just was fussy. It would tell us to get off, then it would immediately tell us to remain on the highway. It was recalculating constantly. It was just not a sorted navigation system. Now, I'd like to live with this car for a week, see if the system becomes more intuitive, but I just don't think you can beat a physical volume and tune knob. The little slider, it's okay, it's not as bad as it could be, but it's just not as easy as physical buttons. Luckily, there are shortcuts down here for climate control, for the different drive modes, for the parking menu, right? That's all good, even for the assist features that you can turn on. And here we go, once again. It's like it just, you get into menus that take over. There we go, into the assist features. This is all, you know, relatively easy to use, but it's just not as good as it could be. Luckily, compared to some older versions of GTI, we do have physical clicky-clacky buttons here in the steering wheel. So we've got tune and volume here on the left side, as well as physical controls for cruise control. And then this is a configurable screen. So I can actually change the different settings here. So if I don't want the boost gauge, I can get rid of the boost gauge. I can go to, for example, a G meter, which is pretty cool. Or I can go to destination info or navigation or all these different settings, or I can see what's going on the radio. So all of that is really good. I just wish that the center stack had more buttons. We do have 2 buttons down here for engine start and for park. And then this is going to be your transmission control, reverse, drive, neutral, all of that's going to be in here. And then of course you got your parking brake control here. And then the seats are an interesting story as well. This is a new material. It's supposed to be more Euro focused, a suede in the inside with cloth bolstering, some vinyl finishing, and red stitching. They look great. They look like they're from a race car, and they feel like they're from a race car, which is to say, if you are over 180, maybe 185 pounds, you're going to be pretty squeezed. I am a thin string bean of a man, and even I am really squeezed in these seats. So it's great for track driving, but for everyday use, I think they made them a little bit too bolstered. And the other thing I want to say about this interior is the fit and finish is excellent. Everything feels like it's really well screwed to everything else, but it's all black. Everything is dark. There's a new finish here on the dash, and they went from like a black to a dark gray. Where's the color? Where are the body colored inserts? That would be really cool, or some contrasting finishes throughout. It's just a very dark interior. Apart from some red flashes on the seats, I wish they would have brightened it up a little bit. So here, we're gonna go into the manual mode here. We're gonna merge onto the highway here. Go full throttle in the second, pulling pretty hard all the way up to red line. It did shift for me there. That was kind of annoying. Interesting. I wonder why I did that. I am in the manual mode. Let me go down a second. Will it hold me at red line, or is it gonna automatically upshift me? Let's see, going up to red line. No, don't do that. How about in the S mode? Here's second gear. Back up to red line, I'm not shifting. Oh, that is annoying. Oh shoot, this is what I mean. Like, some parts of this car are trying to exercise too much control over the driving experience. They say it's a manual mode. It's not really a manual mode though, is it? If I can't exactly hold it at red line, which is something I love to do when I'm autocrossing, for example. Now let's talk about the handling. This is definitely the highlight of this car. The grip levels, even on these stock Goodyears, is just immense. It is so unbelievably grippy. And I have to say, for an electric power steering setup, I'm really pleased with the feedback that the steering delivers. There's a lot of genuine road imperfections that are delivered through the steering, and I have a good sense of what the front wheels are doing. And when you combine that with the 273 pound-feet of torque out of the corners, this is a properly fast car. I have no doubt that Mark I GTI was a fun, quick car back in the day, but this isn't just a quick car. This is now a genuine sports car killer from like the 90s. It is unbelievable what this car can do on a nice back road. So I think that there's a lot of really good stuff in the performance division of what this car is. And I like the suspension tuning as well. It's supple enough to be fine every day. You know, we drove it an hour here to the back roads on the highway, and the suspension was perfectly adequate. Never crashed over the bumps, never felt floaty, never felt too firm. Yet on the back road, I feel the same way with the dampers that this car has. You know, you dial it up and it feels fine. It really is a fun car in the back roads. They've got the suspension nailed. It's a little bit loud on the highway, it's a little boomy, and then it does have adaptive cruise control and active lane centering. But what we found is that the lane centering required quite a bit of steering wheel input to tell the car, hey, I'm awake, I'm still paying attention. It's a little bit annoying, actually. You really got to torque the wheel. I think an actual touch-sensitive sensor in the wheel would be nicer for the highway stuff. But you get this car on a nice road, and it still is very much a GTI. It still has 5 proper seats. You can still come out here and have a lot of fun with friends. But is it still affordable? Well, let's talk about that pricing a little bit. Now, it's gotten just a few $100s more expensive for 2025. So it starts at a tick over $33,000. This version, this SE, is going to be $38,000, and then when you're looking at an Autobahn, you're going to be over 40 grand. Pretty big money. I mean, everything is big money these days, but it does feel a little expensive considering that, you know, when you are into that Autobahn at the top end, you're kind of in GR Corolla territory, and that's going to deliver a manual transmission with all-wheel drive. Golf GTI, of course, has historically always been front-wheel drive as it remains today. So that's where things start to fall apart a little bit for me. I think the way to go with this car is the base model, the S. You still get a nice interior with the build quality. You're missing out on some of the features. You don't have the 3-zone climate control like you would in the Autobahn. You don't have some of like the flashy wheel designs, but I think that's going to be the best value for money. You still get the same engine, you still get the same transmission, you're not really losing out on a whole ton of performance stuff for the typical driver. So for me, get the base Model S, keep it in that low to mid $30,000 range, and then enjoy the car, because by the time you get into the $40,000+ range, then some competition, even if not direct, like the Elantra N, like the WRX with all-wheel drive, and then even like if you want to spend a little bit more, a Golf R within the own family is kind of a, you know, that's a tough choice at the upper end price point. The other point too I want to make is if you do want to roll your own gears, at least you can still get a Jetta GLI. So I know you don't have the hatchback, and it's not as refined of a driving experience, and it's not as well sorted on a back road, but I might go that route just to have that additional engagement of having a 6-speed manual. So folks, that's where I'm at with this new GTI. I'd love to hear your opinions in the comment section below. I think we close this video up. So there we have it. Look, 2 very different cars. They're both hatchbacks. They're both 4 cylinders, but the old one's naturally aspirated with a manual transmission. The new one is turbocharged and full of luxury. So drop me a comment below. Which one do you think is the essence of the GTI? Has Volkswagen kept it with the Mark 8.5? Let me know below. As always, it's been Tommy behind the camera, Zach. We'll see you in the next video.